Kiera.
And my name is Sammy.
And on tonight's news broadcast, we'll be covering the gruesome story of Jonestown, Guyana, and how Jim Jones told the adolescents and the community that there was no effects of cyanide. Sammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about this tragic incident?
Of course, Kiera, it truly is a tragic story. Jim Jones was a man from Indiana who initiated a new religious movement, or a cult, of people called the People's Temple. It started because Jones did not feel accepted in his community and wanted to start a new place where minorities could easily relate. He wanted to make everyone feel included and have a sense of belonging. This cult migrated from the Midwest to Northern California, gaining traction as it moved from state to state. Jones then created a utopian society in Guyana, a nation in the northern coast of South America, where his followers would live. He used a myriad of different techniques in order to gain control of his people, such as desensitizing them to the thought of suicide, playing his voice over loudspeakers 24/7, and even preaching to his followers. Eventually, Jim Jones convinced over 900 people in Jonestown to commit suicide by drinking Kool-Aid that was laced with cyanide. The children drank the Kool-Aid first, and the adults shortly followed.
I looked to my right, then I saw my wife with our son in her arms and poison being injected into his mouth. My son was dead and he was frothing at the mouth. You know, cyanide makes people froth at the mouth.
That's like some heavy stuff in there. You know what? My main thoughts or main claim is that adolescents are not ethically responsible for seeking out the truth of a statement said by an authoritarian they are forced to be associated with.
I have to agree with that, Kiera. You know what? This relates a lot back to the definition of lying that I read in a book called Lying by Sam Harris. It goes, to lie is to intentionally mislead others when they expect honest communication. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I read that. Harris's definition states, to lie is to intentionally mislead others when they expect honest communication. Jim Jones intentionally lied to the adolescents of the cult in order to withhold the truth about the effects of cyanide when they had complete faith in him. They had faith in Jones because they saw him as a variety of higher authority role models, such as a father, a brother, and a godly figure. Seeing Jones as these things made them trust him. Trust is correlated with honest communication. If you put your trust in a person, you assume they will communicate honestly with you. Little did the People's Temple know that Jones brainwashed them into believing false statements, verbal sentences, in order to protect himself from serious consequences that would follow the mass suicide.
Yeah, I agree for one particular reason, and that is because adolescents are socialized to support the traditional values established by their community.
This ties back to the article I read by Julie Beck. One quote stands out in particular. From an evolutionary standpoint, having social support is far more important than knowing the truth about some facts. Adolescents find it easier to trust someone in order to fit in and feel a sense of belonging rather than burn relationships that we spend time and effort building by searching for true facts. For adolescents, the most influential group to them is their peer group. Jones fit any role in a member's life, including a peer. This resulted in the adolescent's desire to have Jones' social support and acceptance. Jim Jones exploited his followers' minority status in society in order for them to have a sense of belonging in society. Jonestown was created in order for minorities to feel like they were part of a utopian society. No one asked questions that opposed Jim Jones' assertions. They did not want to jeopardize the acceptance they now had in a new community by searching for true facts.
Yeah, I interpret this and relate it back to the world because a lot of families that brought children and joined Jim Jones's cult did not have much hope or support in their lives. Jones helped create a role model for them because they did not have anyone else. He gave those adolescents a role model to look up to and a new beginning in a different society. Social classes usually have stipulations that have to be met in order to feel like you belong. However, Jonestown lacked social class and was a town where everybody had a different role. This is especially important to adolescents because if they are labeled as deviant, departing from usual or accepted standards, especially in social behavior, they will become deviant. The labeling theory is how one can be labeled as deviant and then act on those negative assertions. This will lead to developmental disorders as they are not socialized properly.
I also think it's a reason because people of higher authority can evoke trust from their subordinates, which can be detrimental because they are blindly following the person in power.
Yeah, Sam Harris also supports this second reason in his book Lying by stating, many secrets can put us in a position where we are forced to lie or reveal privileged information. The adolescents of the People's Temple trusted Jim Jones because of his authority and control over them. They were socialized to listen to and believe whatever he says as if it were the gospel. Many of these adolescents came from nothing or a family of drug abusers, leaving them vulnerable to seek out someone they could trust and rely on, as they believed him without proper reason. As stated in Reason 1, Jones could be any type of role model they wanted him to be, a god, brother, or father figure. However, the bottom line is that he was always in control. Jim Jones always had more information than any of the other members of People's Temple. Jones, using his position of authority and having more knowledge, concealed how the cyanide would truly affect the adolescents so that they would continue to participate in this mass suicide. Jones often provided his information to the people by word of mouth and no other sources to support it. This created a boundary that restricted adolescents from knowing any other accurate information. The adolescents had no way of knowing that the information provided to them was false, so they ethically are not responsible for finding out the truth of his words. This is also due to the socialization. Jones always possessed the right information and did things to protect him.
I interpreted this by relating it back to bosses and managers in today's society that withhold information from their subordinates in order to maintain the power they have over their employees. This leaves the people with less authority at a disadvantage because they do not have all the facts that can be easily misled and persuaded. This can happen because if they do not have vital pieces of information such as negative repercussions that may occur after completing an action, then the employee will most likely not do it. The employees have to put their trust in their boss, but do not know or even understand all the information, which causes them to lose autonomy and the ability to make an informed decision. The employee has no reason to not trust his boss, but the boss now has to maintain the lie in order to stay in power or reveal the truth that they were keeping, which may lead to a loss of power.
The third and final reason why adolescents are not ethically responsible for seeking out truth from an authoritarian is because adolescents tend to agree with elders within their community, resulting in parallel ideology between the adolescent and the authority figures.
In an honest liar, Randy gave the example of Peter Popoff abusing his power. He took people's faith and took away their security, causing physical harm to them. During this time, many minorities were not welcomed or accepted in society due to past oppression. Jones purposefully created Jonestown as a utopian society in order to control the members' feelings. He created a place where the oppression could finally feel equal. Jones socialized his children to accept whatever he said as true information and to not ever oppose it. This was possible because the adolescents didn't have access to information that would contradict what Jones preached. He brainwashed the kids so that they would believe whatever he said, which would result in similar opinions and points of view, as Jones took the children's faith away by lying to them about the true effects of the cyanide, resulting in a very painful and vivid death for their families. Over the years, Jim Jones desensitized the adolescents to suicide. He made it a normal occurrence, which in fact it is not. Since Jones thought that suicide was socially acceptable, then the adolescents believed it as well. In the end, this mentality is what killed them. The adolescents drank the Kool-Aid for many reasons. They thought that it would be okay since Jones, a trusted figure, told them it would, and because they thought the actual act of suicide was acceptable. The teens had no reason to not trust Jones. They could have never predicted that the actions taken by Jones would have been harmful or untruthful. They were socialized in a certain way and had no one to inform them otherwise.
This is prevalent in today's world because people expect honest communication but receive less than. If you grew up in the same church all of your life with the same pastor speaking every Sunday morning, you are extremely likely to have the same ideas as them because you are socialized to think that what they speak is the truth. This is diffusion of ideas from one person to the next. This is what happened to Popoff and Jones. They took their ideas and reached a wide range of people with it, which in turn made these subordinates have similar ideologies. If you go to the same church for your entire life, you're socialized at a meso level to think a certain way. The example that we put is that if you are socialized within your church to think that abortions are bad, then you will think that for your entire life. Jim Jones socialized the people to think that suicide was socially acceptable. This impacted many people around the country because each sect, a group that has separated from an established church, will become more uniform. But each sect difference to the other ones will become more polarized.
Adolescents are not ethically responsible for seeking out the truth of a statement said by an authoritarian they are forced to be associated with for 3 reasons stated in the video.
The adolescents had no way of knowing what Jim Jones said was true or not, and that's what killed them in the end. Yes, some people should have a level of skepticism, but the adolescents were socialized not to have that.